Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, we have Brian, who wanted to share his Bigfoot encounter that took place in northwest Illinois. He noticed a cow going nuts when all of a sudden, a white-colored Sasquatch came out of the woods. We can only assume the Sasquatch was possibly looking for its next meal. Illinois is a state with lots of farmland, but despite its human presence, the agriculture provides a food source and an abundant amount of cover for the wildlife. I've personally heard a lot of strange encounters from the state, and they usually take place close to the waterways. He described the creature being all white and the head having a point at the top. What is it with the white Sasquatch being so brave and usually being seen on their own? Could it be possible the white Sasquatch get kicked out of the group for being albino and possibly have to fend for themselves? Have you seen a Sasquatch in your neck of the woods? Please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com if you would like to share your story on the channel. Alright guys, let's dive straight into this next Bigfoot encounter from the state of Illinois. Brian, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Doing very well, thanks.
Excellent. Brian, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and your Bigfoot encounter from the very beginning, please.
Okay, yeah, so I'm 62 years old now. This event occurred when I was 11 years old. And I currently live in Northwest Illinois, where the encounter that I had was a little bit south of this area. And it occurred in an area where we had a lot of strip mining back in the 60s. I think probably before then, 60s and 70s. I think it stopped in about the 1970s. And my grandfather had purchased, with some friends of his, about 400 acres of abandoned strip mining um, fields, which at that time they didn't have to reclaim the land. So you just had all these big trailings from the surface mining, and it caused what we called at the time mountains or big hills, and then just lakes everywhere. So friends of his, they're all into sportings, as sportsmen, so they purchased this land primarily just to get away, someplace to go camping, and they all had cabins there. And they did this in the early 1960s. I was born in 1961, so we pretty much spent my entire childhood going to this location. Was about 45 miles from where I grew up, in a very small town up here in the Midwest. And we would go out there every chance we got. But one thing in particular was the Fourth of July weekend. And Fourth of July is my birthday, so we'd always spend an extra time out there during the Fourth of July. We'd have fireworks, and we would invite friends and things like that. So what I found out, I knew it was in the early 70s, and I couldn't remember the date until I did a little bit more research. But it was 1972 when this happened. I was 11 years old, and we would go out there hiking in these hills because, in addition to the trailings that were left by the strip mining, they'd have these big boulders. So they were full of fossils. We would fossil hunt and everything else. We did that, I think, probably as soon as my parents would allow me to go off by myself, I was doing this. So at 10 years or 11 years old, I was with my cousin and two friends of mine. And this was July 4th, 1972, right after lunch. And we were out hiking like we always do. There was one trailing that was considerably higher than the rest of them. We called it highest peak. And this hill, I don't know exactly how high you would say it was, but it was by far the highest trailing. And you climb up that side or climbed up that hill, and you could see for miles. And around this area where the strip minings were, Everything else was flat land. It was cornfields, bean fields, pretty much. So we would always race up this hill to get onto the top. One side was really steep, almost like, a cliff. So we would get up there and find out who would, be able to get up there first. And once we get up there, we'd stand up there and look around everywhere. So on this particular day, and we've done this hundreds and hundreds of times, I got up to the top. I made it up there first. Right behind me was one of my friends, and then my other friend, and then my cousin. So when I had gotten up to the top, and I was looking around, what caught my attention is just down from the peak that we were on was another hill. And on top of this hill was a cow. And this cow was just bellowing and screaming like I've never heard a cow do. And it caught my attention. And as I was looking there, from that hill was a flat area. So I was looking at this cow screaming, and all of a sudden, walking out from behind the hill that cow was on, kind of quartering away from me, was this huge white thing. And it was walking on two legs, just like a person. But this thing was huge. And when I saw this thing, I screamed at my friend who was right behind me. And as soon as I screamed, it immediately stopped. The monster did. Stopped, turned around, and looked directly at me on top of this hill that we called Highest Peak. And my friend who was next to me saw it too. And so we were yelling at my other friend and my cousin to get up here to see this thing. So it was now facing almost broad or face forward. And when we were screaming, the thing would tilt its head to the left and tilt its head to the right, kind of like when you got a dog or something and you're talking to them and they're trying to understand what you're talking about, turning your head to the left and right. Mm-hmm. And so it just stood there for just, I don't know how long it was. It was probably seconds. And then it turned around again and quartered back towards the same direction that it came from. And probably the whole event lasted maybe 10 or 15 seconds. My cousin and my other friend did not see it. It was just me and my one friend. So when we saw this, I mean, we were panicked. We were 11 years old. I think he was 13, this huge thing. And when you look at the size of a cow, this thing was probably twice the height of what that cow was. So I'm figuring now it was probably at least 8 feet or more. So as when we got that, we were panicked. We took off back to the lake where all the cabins and all the adults and everybody were. And when we got back there, we told them what we saw. Unfortunately, you're 11-year-old, 13-year-old kid, and you just saw this white monster. You don't have a lot of people believe in what you said. So, nobody was, wanted to go look for any tracks or anything like that. It was kind of just like we were kind of pushed off, and that was pretty much the end of it. So it was about a couple of weeks later. My friends, their mother owned an insurance company, and we were over at their insurance office, and his mom goes, "But boys, I think this you might be interested in seeing this." And there was a newspaper in the Midwest, and I don't know how far in the Midwest it was called The Grit. And this newspaper, she had an article that she cut out that was describing this creature that the state police, Illinois State Police, and the sheriff's deputies had witnessed. And they described it as this white, huge, monster-looking man that was covered in white hair. So this kind of, showed that we weren't lying or anything when we taught when we were telling them this. And then I was like, well, maybe you guys did see something. So this thing completely changed my life, I think, at the time, because at that time, 11, this was 1972, it wasn't easy to get information about things. I mean, there was no internet, we hardly had, local TV stations, but it was, you couldn't really find information on this. So it took me a while to try to figure out what this was. And I don't think at the time I even knew what Bigfoot was or Sasquatch. But then as the years went on, more information got about it. And then I started to do some more, research that I could and learn more about it. Well, through my entire life now, I'm 62 years old. I never this thing is like it happened just yesterday. And what made me realize the actual year of this was now that I'm Googling this thing, and I realized that there was a encounter in a town called Peoria, Illinois, it's home of Caterpillar. It was about 40 miles south of the town that I saw it in, called Victoria, Illinois. And again, it was described as this white monster that was found in these abandoned coal mines. And so I was able to narrow down the year of it. I couldn't remember, as time goes on, it's been 50 years now, if it was 71 or 72. But they described down there, and there was multiple sightings of this thing in Peoria or that area, and it was described as the same thing. So this was kind of all new information to me, about what was going on just 40 miles to the south of where I saw it. And, like we had never known about this. So, with this thing, and then now with the internet, what brought all this stuff up, and I tell my kids and all these things, the story over and over again, was we were at a wedding last year, and somebody had a decal in the back of their window, and it showed the silhouette of a Sasquatch, and it said, "I believe." And so I was talking to these guys, and they were ex-deputies. One was the groom and one was the best man. And they told me the story when they were on duty, they had an encounter with Sasquatch. And again, this was around the strip mines in Illinois where this was. So that kind of brought all this information back and my feelings back. And then I started to get on YouTube, and I had no idea there was so much information regarding sightings and encounters on YouTube. So I started, to listen to these, and it brought back such vivid memories of what I experienced. And it's just completely amazing to me how frequent this occurs, not only just in, the Pacific Northwest, where you think that it would only be, but also in the Midwest, in Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan, and Wisconsin, how prevalent this is. I think and it has to do with the fact that the internet, you're able to hear about these encounters more, because otherwise I don't think you would hear about them.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you, Brian, for sharing your encounter with me. If you would break down the features on the creature that you encountered, did it have a round head or a conical shaped head?
It had a conical shaped head. And, when you look at the fur, and I say it was cream color, yellow color, it was kind of a dirty yellowish color. The head was conical, and it didn't really have like a neck that you would describe in a human being. It was almost like, the skull was sitting on the shoulders, because when it turned and looked at us, his whole body rotated. And then when he actually pivoted his head, it laterally flexed rather than, turning, like he was trying to figure out what we were. He directly seen. Now, he was only about 100 yards from me. Um, and I can't remember exactly the features because I was so startled with it. But his face, and I don't know if it was a male or female, but its face was pinkish. It wasn't. It wasn't real pink, but you could see there was a pinkish color to it. I couldn't really tell eye color other than I could see the dark circles where the eyes were. The fur, it didn't look real shaggy. And then when it was walking away when we first saw it, it was kind of flexed forward a little bit, leaning forward a little bit. And then when I screamed, when it stopped, it became more erect. And then when it rotated its whole body towards me, its arms, um, it you could tell that it was not a human being. The arms were a little bit longer than normal, but I couldn't really make out features of like hands or anything like that. Um, and then I don't believe I recall any ears. I could not see any ears. But that it's been 50 years now. I remember exactly, the color uh, of it and the fact that it was not real like shaggy.
Yeah. So it was an albino.
And I never, never heard of, the different colors. I heard of black and red, but actual white with mine, and I think that's what kind of, puzzled me the most. And then when I start looking, that article that my friend's mom had, they described it as a white hairy creature. Then, when I Googled the information in Peoria, Illinois, that was a white, shaggy, monster creature. And I mean, they had descriptions of it being 12 foot tall. I don't think, just the fact that it was twice the size of a cow. I think it's probably more eight to nine that what we saw.
Yeah. And was the conical shaped head pretty long, or was it like a short point at the top?
Yeah, it wasn't real long point. It was kind of a, just yeah, just kind of conical. But yeah, it wasn't like a cone head or anything like that.
Okay. And do you think it's the same creature that people were encountering around the state,
Yeah,
even 40 miles away?
yeah, I do. Because when I had never knew about this until just this summer when I found it, and they called it it's like Cohomo monster in Peoria. Um, it was in some of the newspapers in there and some of the, um, let's see, I think it was newspapers that I saw that they had interviewed people that had seen it. And it was described just like the one that we had seen it, other than the fact that I didn't, I wouldn't say mine was, 10 to 12 feet tall. And then when you look on the map where we were located to where Peoria is, only 40 miles away, same year, same description, same color. Yeah, I'm sure this has got to be the same thing.
Yeah. And what waterways are nearby?
In Peoria, you have the Illinois River. And where I was located in up there is a small town called Victoria, Illinois. And these strip mines were, I think they were owned by the Peabody Coal Company. And I don't believe there's any actual waterways through there. I think probably the nearest river would have been the Illinois River. But in all those abandoned strip mines, there's just you have these natural or these man-made lakes all over the place. Everywhere there was a trailing that got plugged up, boom, you had a lake there. So there's a lot of area that way. And I'm not real familiar on the terrain when you go from that location to Peoria. And I didn't even know that there was strip mining all the way that far south.
Yeah, that is interesting. Do you think the Sasquatch or cryptid creatures are attracted to the strip mines just because of the lakes, minerals, and things like that?
Boy, I have no clue. Because we have so much flat land up here. And are these things omnivores? I mean, we got corn and we got beans. And I never hear of anybody having cattle missing or anything like that. But there's plenty of deer here, but you know, like every other animal that we have, it likes water. So wherever you're going to have lakes, you're going to see more deer or more, animals of every kind. So I would imagine they were using that as cover, also, because the strip mines at that time, I mean, these things went for miles and miles of this, you know, these trailings from the surface mining. So, I mean, they were pretty rugged. I mean, you could probably ride a horse over some of them, but most of them you would have to just walk by foot. So it gave them a lot of cover.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What else do I got for you? Do you think that cow survived?
Yeah, I do. I do. Yeah, it was on top of that, and I don't know if it had a calf or for anything like that. But when the when we initially saw it, and we were looking down, and it was on the little trailing right next to the big trailing we were on, that white Bigfoot walk was walking away from that cow. So I don't think the cow was in any danger there. When we saw the creature and he looked at us, then he returned walking the same direction that he came out of. But we never heard of anything like cows being killed or anything. But at that time we were kids, we probably wouldn't even nobody would have told us anything if something like that would have happened, because we do have a lot of coyotes up here and things like that. So,
Yeah, it sounds like the cow was in danger though because it was panicking.
oh, it was. I've never heard a cow yell like that or yelp or bellow in my entire life. That was the first time I've ever heard a cow like that, and that's what grabbed my attention, because you have cows that moo, but this thing was bellowing. There was something that was completely different with this cow.
Yeah, that's interesting. Here in Missouri, there were these reports by St. Clair, Sullivan, Missouri, of a white Sasquatch. Now, this one did have longer hair. It was pretty long, but I was listening to different channels about Bigfoot, and I would hear about this white Sasquatch, and they only had one story on each channel, but none of these people knew each other, and I was kind of putting it all together that it was in the same area, and I interviewed a different guy who lived in that area, and he was talking about this white Sasquatch with long hair, and he's never even watched those channels that I've watched, so it's just wild
Huh.
knowing that
So where was this in Missouri?
this was around St. Clair, Missouri, Sullivan, Missouri, and I mean that's only like an hour and a half away from Illinois, probably about 2 hours maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but makes me wonder because with this white Sasquatch in Missouri, it was always alone. There wasn't ever other Sasquatch involved, and it seemed like it was coming up to people's homes and going through their stuff. I don't know if it was hungry, sick, or what, but
Huh.
it was
So what
strange.
year was this that this happened?
Um, like 2019, around that
Oh, so
time.
recently.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't heard
Huh.
any new encounters about it, but there for a while, there was a lot of reports, and then it just disappeared.
Yeah. Because when we saw ours, that was 72, and all the information from the other sightings, um, locally was in 72, and I've never heard of anything beyond 72. But these were all described as white.
Yeah. Do you think the strip mines had anything to do with the activity, as far as
You
like
know,
paranormal
I
wise, or I mean, because people say there's
I
like an
don't.
underworld, things like that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think it was probably just passing through, because I hear about reports up in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So, I mean, our, when you look at this area where I'm from, it's so flat. I mean, we have timber ground, but I mean, it's not real spacious. You're not going to find, thousands of acres of timber here. It's, you have draws and, maybe 50 acres, maybe 100 acres now and then, but you're not going to have, consistent. Now, around the rivers, like Illinois River or the Rock River, which goes, from the Mississippi up through our area all the way up to Wisconsin. I mean, along the sides of the river, you're going to have quite a bit of desolate timber and backwaters. So that
Hmm.
might be, but I think he was probably passing through. Um,
Yeah, I think that's the case. And people will find Sasquatch in farmland areas such as like Iowa or Illinois, where there's a lot of farmland but strips of woods. And especially when you get close to the rivers, there's a lot of timber. And I think the Sasquatch will migrate through those areas, and they rarely get seen by people, even in that setting.
right. Right. Yeah, and I tell you now, after this kind of all brought up after last year meeting those other guys, I'm getting so much more interested in it again. And really it's just these things just completely amaze me how they're so large, and you can, rarely have pictures of them, but they're so quick. And it's just like I'm a hunter now. I'm a little, you know, after this event happened, I've always been a little hesitant to go in the woods again. It's amazing, 62, and we have a farm up here, and I go down there in the woods during the day, but I tell you, at night, even now, I'm a little hesitant. I get a little bit spooked. And, just because you don't know. And these people that go out and hunt them, they never see them. But I think these things are so elusive that, they could be right by you and you just never know it. We see that with deer, on our property here. My nephew's got an infrared drone, a search and rescue drone, and I'm out there and we don't see anything and fly that drone over there with the infrared. And it's amazing how many animals are out there.
Yeah, it really is. I used to live at a house that was right off of Highway 66 here in Missouri, and there was a little bit of woods behind it, and then there would be Interstate I-44. But I've had Bigfoot activity in that little strip of woods, which is strange because I don't know. You wouldn't think a Sasquatch would be there, but it really happened, and there were several things that happened at that old place, and it defies all logic.
Yeah, I think, and a lot of people that they have these encounters, they get obsessed with it. And I know that I did when I was younger, and I'm actually getting a little bit more of it again, just because it's kind of bringing these, old feelings back that, I'm so interested in watching the videos and hearing the different interviews. Mine was, 15 to 20 seconds long. Seeing hearing some encounters that these people have with different things, it just amazes me, totally amazes me. And I'm kind of scientific minded. I'm my trade. I'm a neurologist, so I'm real scientific. So I need to have proof of things that happen, and this just boggles my mind.
Yeah. When you screamed, that caught the creature's attention. Do you think it freaked the creature out a little bit?
Yeah, I think it did because it stopped so abruptly. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't running, but he was at a pretty good pace. But he was so big that, I mean, he was covering a lot of territory. So when I screamed, I mean, it was immediately he stopped and he rotated his whole body, and he he knew exactly where that sound was coming from because when he turned, he looked right at me. I mean, there was no like searching around where it was. He knew exactly where that sound came from.
Yeah. And typically they know where people are at, but in this instance, I think he was distracted. He was up to something and he was fully focused on whatever he was doing.
Yeah, he was walking, because when he finally turned around and he walked back the same direction he came, we didn't know, was he coming towards us, because he was quartering away from us, but now all of a sudden he's walking back towards us. So, we did everything we can to get out of there.
Have you done any research in that area and with the infrared drone?
No, we didn't. Unfortunately, that area there now is owned by somebody else. And I got on Google Map and I was trying to find it, and there it's so much growth now. Trees are on there. I can kind of pick out the high peak that we called it, but the smaller area, it's just so covered with um, trees that you really can't see. But my brother lives over there, and they never heard of anything else other than nothing new, at least.
Hmm.
And I don't think anybody in Peoria has mentioned anything, because nothing came up when I Googled it.
Yeah. Have you searched on the BFRO website or anything like that for any other encounters around the area?
I have. There were a couple others, but they weren't white. They weren't described as white.
Are there any big power line strips in the area?
They're not in that area. There is by my house, but yeah, but around that area, no, I don't believe so.
Okay. Do you know how far in these strip mines go or how far they did go?
You know, from Victoria, Illinois, that's where they were. And I don't know, after 1970, the late 70s, they started to have to try to reclaim the land. So I think a lot of those may have been, bulldozed in, the hills and the trailings. There's still a lot of that area out there, and I didn't know how far it goes to the south. But even from Interstate 80, there's a town called Atkinson and Anawan. There's lots of strip mine there. So I think that whole area was probably actively mined, but strip mining, I'm not sure exactly how far it went down.
Yeah. And do you know what they were mining?
Coal, yep, bituminous coal.
Okay. Have you had any paranormal activity, anything like that? Any UFO sightings after this going into
Nope,
your life?
never,
Okay.
never. Yep, not one thing.
So that was the only thing that happened after that encounter? You didn't have anything else happen throughout your life?
Nope, that was just it. I lived out in Northern California for a while. I used to go
Mhm.
up in the mountains there, but never heard anything, never saw anything or anything.
Yeah. See, I try to tell people that there is a number of people who just see Bigfoot and that's it. Nothing else ever happens. But there are numbers of people that have a Bigfoot encounter, UFO encounter, paranormal experiences, and it seems to happen all throughout their life. But
Oh,
yeah,
is that right? Yeah.
yeah, that is interesting. Well, I think that pretty well covers any questions that I had for this story, and yeah, you did a great job at relaying the experience, and I was really able to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah, it's funny because even when I tell the story, we were making fun of this the other day. My wife, the hair on my arm stands up when I give the experience of when I first saw this creature. And I mean, it still scares me today. To see something like that when you're 11 years old and not having a clue what the heck it was. I mean, even now today, when I tell this story, and especially if I'm reproducing it, how it was walking out and then how it turned, the hair on my neck and my arm stands up, and I get scared. It's and I'm 62 now, and it's like, even when I go over there after this happened, we never went up in those hills again. We never did. As much as we liked it, we never did. We never went up there again.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And you listened to the Illinois encounter at the disc golf course, and that's what prompted you to get in contact with me, correct?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because I'm like, gosh, here's another one in Illinois. You just don't think of it in Illinois. I mean, come on, we're flat land here.
Hmm.
We don't have, the Sierra Mountains or anything like that. And when I start seeing this, like program I listen with you, it's like, my gosh, this happens quite a bit.
Oh yeah, like in Illinois or Ohio per se, like It happens just as much as like Washington State or Canada, but the fact that the terrain is so worked, people don't want to talk about it because they think about that. There's not really that much woods. There's a lot of people. No one's gonna believe me, but I think if there was just a ton of woods around, I think people would be more open. But yeah, it is hard to open up when you realize that. Yeah, it's hard to believe there's actually Sasquatch out here. So no one's gonna believe my story. So I'm glad you contacted me.
Yeah, because I tell, some of my friends, I don't go around telling everybody this story, and it's like the people that I know, they're friends of mine, and then, all of a sudden I'll have somebody say, hey, somebody said that you saw Sasquatch or Bigfoot, tell me your story. And then, you find out how many people actually, believe this. It's just, they've never experienced it, but, there's a lot of people out there that believe it. There's a lot of things we don't know.
Yeah. And I guess what I was getting at is in the comments, there's all kinds of people that say they've encountered a Sasquatch in Illinois, but it's hard to get people to talk about it. They never email me back when I tell them to contact me. And I think that has a lot to do with it, though, is, all the cornfields and just the farms people. And people just think that there's not enough out there to hold a creature like this. But if they're moving around and, they're super smart and aware of their surroundings, I think it's possible. For sure.
Yeah, I do too. Now, yeah, I guess a couple of questions for you, because, trying to find out, are these things dangerous? Are they, something that, because a lot of times I'll hear stories that some can be aggressive, and then others are pretty evasive. So it's always something that you kind of wonder about. There's just not enough information, I think.
Yeah, I think even the nicest group of Sasquatch can be extremely unpredictable. So
Right.
it's hard to say because a lot of people,
Yeah.
talk about interacting with them and gifting with them. And I've had the same experiences, but at the same time, my dogs went missing. So they were nice to me, but at the same time,
Right. That's
it's hard to
true.
say, what they're
Yeah,
capable of.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think like if you see one, it's best not to pursue it. Just stand there, watch, and let it do its thing. Walk off, or if they're being aggressive, just leave. And I think you should
Right.
be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what my feeling is too. So great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that I was able to log down another Illinois encounter. And if you ever encounter anything again, definitely contact me. Or if you come across anyone that wants to share their encounter, tell them to get a hold of me.
Oh, you bet. And I really appreciate your program. It's very interesting, and especially when you hear something near the home.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm excited to log down this encounter just because it's neighboring Missouri, and I don't have very many encounters from Illinois, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, you have a great day. Thanks.
Yeah, you too. You have a good one, and it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you very much.
Hmm.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right, that's another Bigfoot encounter logged down here on Sasquatch Theory, and I really want to thank Brian for taking the time to share his encounter with everyone. It would be easy to think that a white Sasquatch would be easy to spot and for it to be impossible for something like that to be living in Illinois, but I think the white would help it blend in better just because of the light reflection, and I think it's designed to look that way for a reason. I say that because the white-tailed deer species, if they're not moving, you can't see them. For some reason, white blends in with nature. And I think that's why we see white on all kinds of creatures, because of the fact that it helps them blend in to their surroundings. I seen a jet black Sasquatch one time, and it had white stripes, and I always talk about it. The Sasquatch was practically invisible until it decided to move. But yeah, we won't get into that right now, and I appreciate everyone for listening. Thank you very much, and take care.